Howdy guys and girls, welcome back to another video at BRG Photography. This time we've got a little bit of a different image going on here. We've got a fitness bodybuilding image, and what we're going to do is we're going to edit it to really make these muscles pop and just look really awesome. So let's just go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so here we are. So this one probably won't take as long as some of my other videos, just because in general, like, you usually have to edit men a lot less than you would edit women. Just because, you know, some of the things that you edit out for women usually keep for men, because it just makes them look more rugged and more cool. And especially for an image like this, we're not going to be doing too much like retouching in a sense. But there are a few little things that I do want to fix and touch up before I get into the main kind of sculpting part, where we're going to use dodge and burn to really sculpt these muscles. So what I'm going to do right off the bat is make a new layer, and very similar to my other videos where I'm just kind of doing little touch-ups, I'm going to start off with my in-painting brush tool, make sure it's set to current layer and below, and I'm going to zoom in a bit and kind of go through some parts that I just think I need to just quickly get rid of. Now there's actually not too much on here. There's a few things we're going to address in a corrective dodge and burn layer in a bit, but for example, here on the beard's fine, but because of the way the light's hitting it, some of these little hairs in the beard are really reflective, and they're kind of like white little spots. They can be a bit distracting, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete some of these big ones here. So just using my in-painting tool, I'm just going to go ahead and just some of these ones that I find are really kind of distracting. Going to take out some of these super bright hairs here on the beard. Just something like that. So this is a photo I took about a year ago of a really awesome guy out here in Tokyo. He's a personal trainer. He's been doing karate for like 35 years or something. He's also a bodybuilder. And I think this photo was taken about a week before he was out from competition. So he's looking pretty lean, looking pretty mean. So we thought it was a great opportunity for a photo shoot, and it came out looking really amazing. Now I will say this has been color graded in Capture One before I brought it into Affinity Photo, and I will do some videos in the future about how I do my color grading in Capture One, but for now I just want to focus on the retouching aspect here in Affinity Photo. So we can see we just took out some of those little white spots on the beard. I'm not even sure if you're going to see them on YouTube so much, but there you can kind of see there's a few more I can probably take out here. Like that one. I don't want to take them all away because then it's just look too black, but just some of the kind of bigger spots that are kind of bothering me. And we could do some of that here, maybe like even this little bump on the forehead, just a skin texture, just the ones that I would consider a little distracting. And you know, honestly, when this goes to Instagram, like I've said before, you're not going to see any of this stuff. But I will tell you a little story. I did a photo shoot for another friend of mine. He's kind of a CEO of a small company, a company out here in Tokyo, and he just needed some photos for the company website, for his Instagram and stuff. So we did a cool little photo shoot, and actually, so down here, same thing. You can tell he kind of shaves his chest for competitions and stuff, and some of the chest hairs are just reflecting the light a bit too bright. And I just want to kind of get rid of those, so I'm gonna just go ahead and do that. Anyway, so back to the story. And so, you know, I did a cool photo shoot for him. He put it up on the website and his Instagram, I think. It looked really cool. And his company ended up doing this really awesome project that got a lot of attention. And so he was getting lots of interviews. And because of the whole current, you know, COVID situation, a lot of these other companies and stuff, they couldn't send photographers out to go take photos. So they would always ask him, hey, can you just send in a photo that we can use for our interview? And so he sent them the photos that I had took. And because of everything that was going on, these photos were just being circulated everywhere. Every little magazine or online article that was written about them were all using my photo. And so in that sense, and I think one or two times it did get printed in a magazine out here in Japan, and it may have been in print in a magazine back in the US, but it's good that I spent the time retouching it full size. I'm happy that when he said, hey, I need those full size images because these magazines need photos of me, I can just send him the full-size images without having to go back and retouch them because I didn't actually do, you know, a thorough job the first time. So all these little things here that you're not going to see on Instagram, yeah, that's fine. And, you know, you can go as far as you can go if you want. But I think sometimes it's kind of nice just to, you know, retouch them in general full size, because you never know when the full size images might be needed. All right, so a few other distracting things here, like this little freckle here, I'm going to delete that one, delete that. Some of the brightness and lightness issues, like for example these stretch marks that you see this a lot on sometimes bodybuilders, just because like they're just gaining mass so quickly the skin just can't catch up, and you get these stretch marks around the chest, pectoral, and bicep area. So we will probably address that in a bit too. And I do want to address this kind of like bump, which is a natural on his forehead here, and we're going to just do some tricks to kind of like even that out, smooth it out. There's also some saturation issues. This part of the forehead's really saturated, this part's not saturated at all, so we're going to try to match that. And I think that's what we're going to do. Actually, there is one more thing. Maybe it's a bit of a weird one, but the just like the hairs that we were doing on the chest, the nipple area here is really reflecting this light, and it's just looking like a really two white dots, which may not bother you, but it's just something that I want to try to clear up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a clone stamp brush, and then current layer and below, we're going to zoom in a bit more, and I'm just going to basically just get rid of these specular highlights that are right here. Just kind of clone stamp over them to get rid of these specular highlights, and that's just going to make them less just like two white shiny little points on his chest. These are weird things that you got to think about when you're editing photos sometimes. And so let's see if you can see a difference there. Like that's after, and that's before. And so you can see like it just, now that you don't have these two like white dots right here, and we've just got them like that, and that looks fine. And if we really wanted to, when we get to our dodge and burn step, we can actually burn them down to make it a little darker. But I think for that part, that's going to be good. This part on the forehead, we can try a few different things. I can try to bring some of this texture over, so I'm going to go ahead and stay on my clone stamp tool, and we're going to do a low flow, like 5%, 100% hardness. Let's increase our brush size a bit, and let's just see what happens. Let's just kind of sample from this area here, and just kind of like put in some of that texture there. Maybe do the same thing here. And you will see some repeating patterns, but we can address those in a second. And yeah, something like that. Maybe here, this kind of dark part, we can kind of like, that's a bit too bright. Maybe just a little bit. That's why I kind of like using the low flow, is you can kind of control exactly how much you are doing here. All right. And yeah, I guess that looks okay to me. Yeah, definitely kind of like fix that bump a little bit. There's a kind of a darker spot here, but I think we can probably dodge and burn that. So let's just try to like, yeah, let's just see if we can use, again, just a simple clone stamp, nothing fancy, just to kind of even this out a bit. And there, I think that actually makes, a little bit of difference, kind of even out the head a little bit. That I think looks pretty good. All right, so this is our first initial cleanup, and there's really not too much. We've just done a few little marks and stuff on the skin, maybe little bumps and stuff like this that we just want to kind of get rid of. I think guys in general have a lot more little scars and nicks and cuts and scratches than women do. Let's see if we can get rid of this little like scar or bump here. Cool, that was easy. And so I think usually when I'm doing men, I'm always kind of getting rid of a lot more little like cuts and nicks and little scars and stuff. But I think for that looks pretty good. Again, not too much difference at this size, but now we're going to get into our corrective dodge and burn. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to, now I actually have a macro set up to do this automatically, but I'm going to show you how I do it step by step. So I'm going to go ahead and make a curves layer. And this is going to be our dodge. We're going to bump this up to here. Let's close that. Let's invert that layer, and then we'll just call it dodge. Just do the same thing. Let's create another curves layer. This time this is our burn one, so we're going to drop this down and make it a bit dark. And we'll invert that, and we will call that burn. Oops, burn. Okay, and then sometimes to help identify some of the parts we need to correct, it's easy to look at it in black and white. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new layer. We're going to say a new fill layer, and we're going to make this fill color black, and then we are going to change this to color. And this gives you a nice, just really average, great black and white image. And it's going to help us notice some of the tonal differences without getting distracted by the color. Now, another thing you can do to really help bring out these tonal differences, make another curve layer. This is going to be a helper curve. And I'm going to make a pretty extreme S curve. And this is going to be, maybe not that dark because he's already pretty dark. But you can notice that if we do an extreme version of an S curve, it actually makes the contrast really contrasty. And that actually helps us see some of the parts that we want to fix. Like, for example, these lines here on the chest. You know, you can see the stretch marks we talked about earlier. Maybe some parts on the face, and even maybe help us kind of reshape the head so it just looks a little more smoother, I guess, for a better word. And maybe like this like spot here, things like that. It's a lot easier to see when you have this extreme contrast going. And this is, again, helpers. So I'm going to actually group these two together. I'm going to call these helpers. And then I also go ahead and group these two together, and that'll just be dodge and burn. Boom, just like that. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with our dodge layer. We're going to grab a paintbrush. We're going to make sure we are painting with white. We're going to be doing 2% flow, 0% hardness, 100% opacity. And let's just go ahead and start doing a few corrections. So first thing I want to do is try to get rid of some of these little stretch marks. Now here I'm actually going to start with the burn because I need to make these things darker. So just kind of with my burn layer, I'm just going to come in here and just kind of make that part darker. And you know what? I think this curves helper is a bit too extreme. Well, this is pretty light. It's hard to see. So let's just keep it on for now and just see if I can darken up some of these stretch marks. And you know, this is a personal preference. You can leave them. You know, he might be, hey, it looks cool to me, or I don't care. But I think if I'm looking at the general image as like a piece of art, as a photograph, you know, some of these little things can just be distracting. You might be distracted by seeing the stretch marks. You might be like, oh, you know what? Oops, I'm painting on the wrong layer, and I'm not doing anything. You know, it just can be something that's distracting, and I don't want things to distract. I don't want things to distract people from like the overall image. So that's why I'm always kind of getting rid of these just these little points that you may not care about, but your eye or viewer's eyes will subconsciously go to things that stand out. And so let's see, same thing over here. Let's just try to darken up some of these lighter spots just so they don't stand out as much. Let's just turn off and on as soon as we've done. So there you can kind of see we've fixed some of that, and you know, you can come in here and get really detailed. You could also do this with frequency separation, which would be another way to do that. And I'm actually going to make a video on frequency separation versus dodge and burn in the future, so be on the lookout for that. Here it's a bit dark, so we're actually switch to our dodge and then just you know, lighten up that part there. This part we're gonna this is all the natural striation in the chest muscles, and we want to keep that. We're actually going to accentuate that to make it look really awesome. There's a few more stretch marks here, right here at the armpit, bicep, chest area. So I'm just going to go with my dodge and just kind of lighten those up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I think if it's too perfect, then it just starts to look, you know, a bit fake. And this part's a bit dark. I'm just doing it to really even things out without making it look too phony, because that's my whole goal. I like my stuff to look natural and real. And yeah, you can look at my photos and tell I did some color work or a little bit of retouching, but not like it's just been overdone. There's definitely photos you see on Instagram and social media where like that's just way too much. Like they've lost all skin texture. They've got like no definition in like their skin anymore. So let's just keep it like that. So let's just go ahead and turn off our helpers. And let's just turn off our dodge and burn and see what we've done. Look at that. Pretty neat. We back out a bit. I think these things were distracting to me, and by removing them, they have taken away that distraction. So I'm now focused on the whole image and less so on that he's got stretch marks or a scar or something somewhere. And so now I can do that. I can come in a bit more. I can see there's a bit here. Maybe just do a little bit more if I can darken some of these down a bit. and then I think we'll be okay for that. And you don't always have to work in this black and white. You can turn off your helpers if it helps, and you can say, okay, actually I see a bit better with a color. Your choice, up to you. This is a vein, so we're going to keep that, I think, intact. Yeah, and a few little things here, like that's dark, that's dark. This little white spot I mentioned earlier, we can just darken that down a bit just so it's not sticking out. And I think everything else looks okay to me. This dark spot here, let's just dodge that. Again, like, this is nothing. This is a tiny little detail. Could be just some mosquito bite or whatever. But, you know, I think it's just something that, for me, like, my eye goes to this spot where it's a dark little thing. You know, this dark part here, this doesn't bother me at all. Like, but, you know, it's up to you. You can make it as smooth as you want or as rough as you like. Here we've got, like, it looks like this is the light. Yeah, it's a bit of light, so we're going to keep that there. But this little corner is just a bit too dark, so we're going to dodge that to kind of bring it up. And then even actually, let's see here. So this part is kind of coming white, and maybe I'm actually going to darken a little bit of this here and this white part here. You do have to be almost kind of thinking about it like a painting, as if you were painting this. And there's this dark part here, which is fine, but I think I'm actually going to just see if I can, if I just dodge it down a bit, I think it's going to actually bring out the chest a little bit more. So I do think definitely, like, if you already do art in some other form or drawing or something, you probably will be a bit better at this, because you can look at things as almost a painting and how you would paint it. So let's take a look at what we've done so far. So there you can see, like, we've just kind of, you know, evened things out a bit. And I could still come in here and say, okay, and actually I do want to dodge this part down a bit more. Want to brighten it up just so it's not like that. All right, cool. Let's just leave it like that. Let's move on. And so the head, we want to maybe fix a little bit of this head part here. I can see this is kind of dark. This part is some saturation issues. We'll do in a second, but let me just see if I can even out some of the little, like, bumps on the head, which is, again, not a big deal, but just something that I want to correct. So just maybe this dark part here is a little light. There's some a light patch here behind the ear. We're just going to darken that up. And let's see, maybe like just the light is hitting this part interesting, so I'm gonna just maybe dodge right here just to kind of like make it look a bit more round, I guess. And here's like a dark kind of like area. We're gonna do that. Let's brighten that up. Let's brighten this up. All these little adjustments, they all total up into quite big differences, I think. Like, you can see, like, just that bit there makes a little bit of a difference. So do this a bit more, and then we'll move on to the more exciting part. Well, not yet. We gotta fix this saturation problems in the skin or in the forehead. We'll do that in a second. And I guess, like I said earlier too, if I wanted to, I can come down here and just maybe darken down, burn down the nipples a little bit, just again so they're not standing out and just like beaming like through the photo. Alrighty, cool. Let's take a look at that. So you can see, like, just those little adjustments really kind of helped things out. I'm gonna go ahead and delete my helpers layer. And so if you look at everything that we've done so far, what did I do? I did something by accident. If we go ahead and look at everything so far, you can see, like, those are the little adjustments we've done, and all those little distractions are now gone, and we can focus on the image as a whole. And awesome. All right, so let's do really quick adjustments here to fix these saturation differences. Now, there are a few ways you can do it. One way, we can make a new layer, and we can set that layer mode to color. We're gonna grab a paintbrush, and before I do that, let's go ahead and go to our eyedropper tool over here, and I want to set the radius to about 17 by 17. So it's going to look at a patch of 17 by 17 pixels, and it's going to give me the average color of that. That usually is a bit better than like 1-to-1, where you might accidentally grab some super light or super dark pixel of a random color, where at least here, if I decide, okay, I want to eyedrop from this area, I know that I'm getting kind of a 17 by 17 average of around here. So we're going to go ahead and just pick something like, we'll say, yeah, something around this color, something around here. And I want this red part of the head to kind of be that same color. We're going to go to our paintbrush now. We're still at 2% flow. And let's see what happens if we just start painting that in. Now, because our flow is so low, it might be kind of hard to see. Yeah, so let's do this. Let's do full 100%. And then I'm going to paint. And you can actually see, like, if I really go overboard, you can see the color that it's become. You can see, like, here, the color is pretty close. You don't even see any difference because it's the same color. So what I want to try to do is just go through this part a bit. And now we can maybe drop our flow down to, like, 3 or 2%. Maybe do that. Let's grab my eraser because I went too far. And we'll do another low flow to kind of, like, try to blend this in. And I know it looks a bit funny now, but what we're going to do is, just like with everything else, when you're working with layers, is just lower that opacity. So let me just try to get a nice little balance where I feel like the redness is starting to go away. Maybe around like there. And I know it's really subtle. You probably can't even see it on YouTube, but yeah, we're just trying to lower the redness on that skin. All right. And so we've also got this forward part of the forehead, which is a bit desaturated compared to the other parts. This top part's actually a bit too saturated. So what we're going to do in a two-step process, we're going to grab our HSL adjustment layer. Go ahead and grab the red because that's where his skin is living. And we're first, let's bump up this saturation here. We're going to turn this up. We'll do something like that. We are going to now invert that layer. And then with our low flow paintbrush, we're going to paint with white because we're now on an adjustment layer, and these layers have the masks automatically built in. And I'm just going to start painting, and you can see it's already like way too saturated, but that's okay because that's what the opacity slider is for. So just a little bit, maybe at around 20%, just to kind of bring up that saturation a bit. And now that I look at it, I'm like, you know what, this part of the head is a bit too bright, so let's burn it down. So I'm just gonna kind of burn down there we go. That looks better. Here, there's a bit dark. Come in here and dark brighten that up. Even if we think that's dark, we can come do that. Brighten up some of this, like so. Maybe this is a bit, we can do that. And there we go. And you can see these two things here. They're probably, I mean, they're very, to be honest, they're barely noticeable on my screen, but I can see that it's definitely, and now I think if I think this part's a little too saturated, we're going to do the same thing. This time we are going to lower the saturation like that, and then invert that, and then just with our low flow paintbrush, just kind of paint in that to lower that saturation on some of these parts here. All right, I think that looks okay. I think this one can actually be a bit more saturated. Let's see, that's too much, but maybe something around there. And I can always switch to my paintbrush again to kind of get it blended in a bit nicer. Something like that. All right, it's not perfect, but if we look at everything, I mean, you can see, maybe you might be able to see this, that this is before where this part of the forehead desaturated, this is a bit too saturated, and after we've kind of evened out the saturation across everything. So yeah, still, now that I zoom out, I can see, okay, now I want to come back to my dodging and burning and just maybe even out some of this stuff. This is a bit too bright here. This area is too bright. And we're just doing this to kind of, you know, reshape the forehead. You know, you can reshape objects with light and shadow. You can make things look rounder, flatter, more even, different shapes. So the dodge and burn is really powerful way to reshape tools. So look at that. I mean, look at that. We've reshaped the forehead just by like using dodging and burning. That is pretty neat, I think. All right, let me see if I can just maybe this part here, brighten this up. So this kind of like, I don't know, I guess like the vein or your natural skull has these kind of shapes in it. Whatever. Again, it's not like anything bad, of course. And if you want, you can keep it and it looks fine, doesn't bother you. Cool. But like I said, it's just one little thing that distracts me that I don't want to be distracted by. I want everybody to look at the muscles and all the cool stuff and not be distracted by some random stretch marks or whatever, or bump in his forehead. I think that's a pretty solid dome, I think. Yeah, that is pretty awesome. And yeah, there's still some color saturation issues there. I think this is the desaturation one. I should probably label these. So I can come in here with my white brush still and maybe just say, okay, let's just slightly try to desaturate that a bit and say, okay, cool, let's be done with that. We're done. Alrighty, excellent. So now we are going to move into our creative dodging and burning. Let me just group these together. We're going to call this forehead. And now the fun stuff. So this is where we're going to actually make these muscles pop and look awesome. So what I'm going to do is very similar to our corrective dodge and burn. Is we're going to make two curve layers, one dodge, one burn, and that's what we're going to do our shaping. Now I've already got a macro set up to do that right here. I have it called contouring D&B. I'm going to just click on that. I'm going to group these together. Unfortunately, you cannot save the group action in a macro, so maybe they'll fix that one day. All right, and to be honest, it's going to be pretty easy. We're looking where we want to dodge, where we want the muscles to really pop and stand out, and we want to burn to recess some of the shadows. So we're going to make sure we have our completely white brush. We are at a brush with 2% flow, and I'm just going to come in here and just start brightening some parts up. Let's just do that. It's going to be really subtle. You may not be able to see too much of that difference, but then once I do a little on and off, then you're going to be like, oh wow, snap, that is a pretty big difference. And so sometimes you can get really in here and just really like poke out these little things, really define these muscles here in the obliques and the abs. And it's gonna look really cool. So let me just show you that on and off. I mean, it's subtle, but I mean, I think that looks pretty cool. And I think it looks totally natural. It doesn't look like, oh, you just painted on some, abs or whatever. No, I mean, he's got them, obviously. We're just accentuating them. So it just really helps the image look 3D, just really pops out and looks really cool. All right, so we're gonna do that here. I'm moving pretty fast just for this video, and looking, just highlight some of these striations in the chest and the pectoral muscles here. This is already pretty bright, so I might just actually brighten that one up just to kind of like get it even. Face is fine. I mean, you can maybe come down here to just get some more definition in the face, but maybe the shoulder. Again, these are already pretty bright, so we don't have to do too much here. Let's take a look at this so far. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Yeah. I'm buying that. All right, and then so now let's just go into our burn. These parts are already pretty dark, but we can just kind of go over it a little bit to really, if we have something really dark next to something really light, it's just really gonna pop out and look 3D. Maybe like, over the deltoids and the bicep area here. And it's going to be something like that. And maybe just like over this front deltoid. And maybe underneath the collarbone. And some of these, that's maybe too much. Some of these chest kind of striations and that cleavage down there, it looks really cool. Everything else here looks fine. Maybe I'm actually gonna brighten that part of the forehead up just a bit, just so it looks a bit more round. and maybe here, and there we go. Maybe we can actually like come up here on the traps, brighten up the traps a bit, and let's take a look. So if I grab them both in this group and we turn it off and on, like that's the before and that's the after. It's not a huge difference, but it just looks, I think it just looks pretty awesome. And so if we look at everything we've done so far, and I'm doing that by, I'm hitting a Command Option A on a Mac, and that's going to select all your layers except the background layer. So it's a great way to like do a quick before after. So this is before, and this is the after, and I think that looks pretty awesome. So I think we're going to say this image is done. Again, we didn't do too much. We basically just went from this, which is already an amazing looking image, to that, and just really made it look awesome, cool, muscles pop without looking too fake, and I think we did a pretty good job. So as always, thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. I hope you picked up a few tips and tricks along the way, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.